All right, what's up, guys? Another episode of the Growth by Sean podcast. I have Bonnie here. Bonnie, I don't even know your last name.
It is
I don't know why.
Campbell. It's
Campbell. All right.
new, actually. I just changed it because I got
Oh,
married.
all right. Yeah. Congratulations, then. How you doing, though?
Thanks.
Good. Good so
Yeah,
far.
that's good.
All right. Um. So usually I just give like a little bit of background on like how I came in touch with this person. So Bonnie and I met at the ICA event in Scottsdale. Um, Probably like a month ago, maybe at this point. Um, and a lot of different coaches and things there. And we just became friends along with our little group of people that we all met. So that was pretty cool. Um,
Yeah, I think we just ran into each other and I was like, you looked like you wanted to go to lunch. And I was like, I'd like to go to lunch and meet people. And I was like, do you want to go to lunch? And we just all went to lunch together and it was great.
I don't know if it was that or did you meet, I thought it was that you had met Stan on one day, like in the morning, and I had
Yeah.
met Stan in like the afternoon. And
Oh, it
then
was
the
him I
next
asked
day,
to lunch. And then he was like, hey, I met a new friend yesterday. We all want to go get the same tacos again? And I was like,
yes,
yes, I'm always
yes.
about tacos.
So then we all went to lunch and then we met two other people and
Ah,
then we ended up with a big like group of eight or whatever. So um yes, usually just how I start things is you can just say like a little bit about you or what you do or
yeah.
who you are, things
So
like that. Quick little synopsis, wherever you want to take it.
I'm a registered dietitian and I'm a weight loss coach online, and I have been an RD for the past 6.5 years. And I initially started working in the hospital, which is pretty classic for registered dietitian, but I knew I wanted to help people losing weight.
Mhm.
And that's sometimes frowned upon for RDs. They're like, oh, we're too good for that kind of thing. And I'm like, what? This is where everybody needs us. This is where the average person is,
Mm.
especially the average woman. I was working in the hospital, working with, going into somebody's room after they just had a heart attack and trying to help them from having another heart attack. And if I'd met that person 30, 40 years earlier, and we'd lost 20, 30 pounds together, they wouldn't have had that heart attack.
Mm.
Or at least they
Oh,
wouldn't have had it at 60. Maybe they would have had it at 80.
yeah,
That's way more impactful.
yeah.
Um, and I find it really rewarding because I can really get to know my clients as people. And that's really, it's just so much better than, seeing somebody when they're in their hospital gown and being like, I can get you a boost or an insure. And it's
Yeah.
kind of sad.
So, is that what most people do as a registered dietitian? Is they first go into the uh, clinical or hospital setting? Like, what is
Yeah,
the
I would say that's where the best jobs are in
okay?
the hospital, inpatient and outpatient. So outpatient would be like after that person is no longer in the hospital for their heart attack, they would be recommended to come and see the registered dietitian once or twice in the outpatient clinic.
Mhm.
Um, for because I would give them diet advice, and I'm like, you're not going to remember any of this. You are,
Mhm.
in the hospital right now.
Yeah.
I'd say another really big place for dietitians is in long-term care facilities,
Okay.
making sure that the residents there have enough to eat, they're not losing too much weight. And that's
Okay.
why people say, oh, you should go look for a registered dietitian for weight loss. I'm like, most registered dietitians don't know anything about weight loss because
Hmm.
our training is a lot of how to prevent weight loss in
Yeah.
someone who's in the hospital, or lower their blood pressure or lower their cholesterol, and you kind of have to take extra training to.
Okay.
That's why some people are like, saw an RD and she just said eat more vegetables. And it's like,
Hmm.
yeah, because that's all she knows. Because this is
Yeah.
not, other than like bariatric surgery, most RDs don't know anything about weight loss. That's not
Interesting.
their job.
So what is the how do you start in like the process of becoming a registered dietitian then? Like what is that like
Yeah.
schooling or education like?
Yeah. So I had my bachelor's in math. Thought I wanted to be a math teacher. I started student teaching and I realized I did not want to be a math teacher, but I still wanted to help people learn. So I was
Hmm.
looking at other fields. And also being a teacher is very stressful. If you're listening to this and you're a teacher, bravo, I could not do it. I do not have that kind of tolerance for stress.
Mhm.
Um, so I went and got my master's in nutrition.
Okay.
And that's one of the reasons I picked that is because I could help people learn who wanted to learn, and I wasn't in a strict system with nutrition, but also because you could get a master's in something without having a bachelor's in it. So it didn't feel like I was backtracking. But it's 2 years of nutrition education, very intense. You've got things like macro, digestion, macro and micronutrient supplements, counseling. We had 2 semesters of work in the clinic, which is a reason I chose that particular program, because a lot of programs don't have that clinic work. And that was really cool. Cooking classes. I took, electives in like sports nutrition, nutrition through the life cycle. So I don't know a ton about like, same thing, different RDs have different specialties. You can ask me about infant nutrition and I can tell you the basics. I do not know, because there's people who specialize in that, and that's not me.
Yeah.
And then you, after you graduate, and now if you're going to become a registered dietitian as of, I think, last year, you have to have your master's.
Okay.
It used to be you could have bachelor's or master's. Now they're saying it's master's only. And then you have to do a year residency.
Okay.
And in that residency, you have 9, I think, different rotations of all the different kinds of jobs you could do as an RD, the main jobs. So I think I had 3 or 4 months of clinical, 1 month of long-term care, Meals on Wheels, WIC, which is working with pregnant women and children, school food service, hospital food service. I'm sure I'm missing something. I also worked with the Green Bay Packers for a week. That was pretty cool.
That's really cool. Wow.
You get 1 week where you get to choose whatever you want, and that was what I chose.
Okay.
As long as you can find an RD and they're willing to supervise you for that week.
Okay.
So yeah, there's a lot of different things that you can do as a registered dietitian, which is also really exciting about the field.
Interesting. Yeah, I did not know that it was that like extensive.
Yeah, and then you have to pass a huge exam that has a 50% pass rate.
Okay.
It's a very difficult exam.
Okay.
So yeah, it's pretty intense.
Okay, interesting. So with where you're at now, okay, do you think that all of the education that you did for becoming a registered dietitian was, not that it wasn't like beneficial, but do you think it prepared you enough for what you do now with your online coaching business? Or was there a lot of different?
I did a little bit of extra. I did some electives when I was in school, because I knew this is what I wanted to do. Like I did sports nutrition and I did weight loss nutrition. And then I did a couple extra, you have to do a continuing education. So I did some workshops and continuing education on it too. And then extra work on like how to be a good coach, which I had some of in school, but not, I thought there should be more, but I'd say mostly, I know a lot, and I'll talk to other nutrition coaches who did not go through that schooling. And most nutrition coaches did like a 6 or 8 week certification course. And that really just gets, that's nutrition 101, maybe 102. It's not going to get, and do I remember every single thing about like that you learn? No, nobody remembers every single thing they learned in school, but I can easily go back and look it up very, very easily and be like, oh yeah. And it's usually a lot of the nitty gritty, like cellular level things, like, oh, you need this. When you eat a gram of carbohydrate, it gets digested by this particular enzyme in this particular spot. And then it goes through this thing, and then it gets used by the cell. And here's where the mitochondria comes into play and all that stuff. Do I remember every single detail? No, I don't. But I remember the broad strokes. And I think a lot of people don't necessarily know, like, oh, when I'm digesting something, that digestion starts, in this place for this thing. And if that's off, other things are going to be off.
Yeah. So my next question would be, is there what is the main difference between a registered dietitian and someone like a nutritionist? I don't know if this is something that I could easily Google, but coming from you, I feel like
it's confusing.
I feel like you would know.
Because now they call it registered dietitian nutritionist. And it's just like very confusing for people. They try to make it less confusing, and I think it's more confusing. And every state has different laws. So that's also fun. But a registered dietitian, you have to go through the schooling that I was talking about, either bachelor's or master's, depending on when that person graduated, the year residency, the exam, continuing education, all of those things. And a nutritionist, can range from they went through the schooling but didn't do the residency and the exam. You know,
Mhm.
some people, they weren't able to do that year-long residency for whatever reason. Or it can be someone who, you can call yourself a nutritionist right now in most states. In my
Okay.
state, you could call yourself, in Washington, you could call yourself a nutritionist. There's no regulation on it. It's like
Okay.
being called a podiatrist or a foot specialist.
Mhm.
Podiatrist is a like term that means something, and someone could be a foot specialist, and I don't want to go into what that could mean, but it could mean anything.
Okay.
Um, so if you see someone with a registered dietitian with an RD, you know something about them. And it doesn't necessarily mean someone who just calls themselves a nutritionist is bad.
Mhm.
You just need to do a little bit more research on like what qualifies this person to be called this.
Okay. Interesting. I did not know this. Because honestly, I thought that they
Well,
were like, I didn't really know what a nutritionist was. I thought a nutritionist was someone that had done some type of like schooling, just like an RD would have. Like that is what I would
right.
have thought when I think
And some of them
nutritionist.
do.
Okay.
And
Now
there's
you.
some like my one of the coaches on my team, she has
Mhm.
her master's in nutrition.
Okay.
She's still a nutritionist
Okay.
because it wasn't an RD program. It was
Mhm.
for more, what I'm doing now, what we do.
Mhm.
And she
Mhm.
was looking at programs. She's like, should I become an RD? And I'm like, honestly, I don't think it's worth it for what we're doing. I'm supervising you. You don't need it. I think this program that you're looking at is going to be the things you're going to learn are going to be much more impactful in what we're actually doing than like
Okay.
learning how to do intravenous nutrition in the hospital. She didn't learn how to do that because she doesn't
Okay.
need it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, you were talking about some of like the laws that differ from state to state in terms of like what? In terms of how what you can call yourself or in terms of like what you can provide like service based.
The second one. So in terms of
Okay.
what you can provide, a lot of it is, from my understanding, chiropractors and acupuncturists and people who want to be giving nutrition advice, they
Mhm.
lobby for that to not be only able to be given by a registered dietitian.
Okay.
That's where a lot of this comes from. But you still can only be called an RD if you have all of the things. But
Okay.
certain states let non-RDs give medical nutrition advice.
Okay. Now what is like medical nutrition advice? Is that just like
So,
me like if I just came to a friend or you can go and then I will you go
well, why don't you
first.
say what you think? Because I think people, someone listening to this probably thinks what you're thinking.
Yeah, I'm just
I'm
wondering,
curious.
like, in terms of like advice, if my buddy came over and he was like, "Oh, should I eat this or this?" And I said, "Oh, well, this might be more beneficial for this right now." That would be me giving him like quote unquote advice, right?
Yeah, but
So
that's fine.
where do we
That's fine.
okay, so
Um,
where does the line start to get drawn
if
is
your
what I'm
friend
curious about.
is a diabetic,
Hmm.
then you need to be a lot more careful. And you probably
Okay.
shouldn't be saying you should eat this. Or if your friend is pregnant or breastfeeding, or it might be. And if you there's certain advice you can still give,
Hmm.
right? Anything that is put out by the government,
Hmm.
saying like, hey, you should be eating more fruits and vegetables, you should probably have protein, like those things
Hmm.
generally going to be okay. But there's certain medical conditions like kidney failure that actually all of the conventional healthy foods are bad for those people. So
Okay.
when you don't know what you don't know, you can be giving bad advice. But at the same time, just like for personal training, I do not give personal training advice. But when my
Hmm.
client comes to me and says, my shoulder hurts, I
Hmm.
say, maybe you shouldn't do pull-ups this week. Like, I think that'd be a good idea to like rest it.
Okay.
And if it's still hurting in a week, maybe go see a physical therapist and see what's up.
Okay.
I can give that level of advice. Or if somebody says, hey, what kind of workout do you think I should do? I can look and be like, hey, what kind of equipment do you have? Oh, let me find this workout someone else wrote. I'm not going to write a workout. I'm not qualified.
Hmm. Hmm.
I'm not going to look at your form on your squat. I don't know anything about it,
Okay.
but I can keep you accountable to going to the gym several days a week and help you figure out what program might be a good one to follow, as long as you don't have any like injuries that we need to worry
Okay.
about.
Okay.
And I would say the same thing is true nutrition wise. If someone's an overall like completely healthy person, you can give them basic, like fruits and vegetables are good,
Yeah.
protein's good. don't eat so many cookies, stop drinking so much booze. Like
Mhm.
generally good advice. When you give really super specific or someone who has some kind of medical condition,
Mhm.
that's when it gets dicey.
Okay. Couple of things that I want to go off of from there. First off, the someone that may have like kidney failure, you said that most like quote unquote healthy foods may not impact them in a good way. Can you just like explain this to me? Like why?
I am not a kidney
And
dietitian. I just
okay,
know it's freaking
okay,
weird.
okay. Interesting. I
Like
didn't know if you knew like if
it,
that was
like
something you would
certain
like know. Okay.
things, like they're supposed to have white bread instead of wheat. Things like
Okay.
that, where you're like, that's totally the opposite of what I've ever been told.
Okay.
When you get to like kidney stuff, that's why I tell people if they have kidney concerns, we actually have a dietitian on my team
Hmm.
who is does know a lot more about that than I do. So I'm like, well, let me talk to Trisha and see if she knows enough to help you with this. I know the basics and I do not know the complete ins and outs of it. And I'll admit
Hmm.
that.
Okay. So now I want to start getting into like your brand, the Nourish Path, right? That's what it's called, like your
Mhm.
business. Um, I want to start to talk about like what you guys provide service wise, because with a lot of like online coaches and people in this realm, it's nutrition and programming, and they go like hand in hand. So, how does yours start to differ in terms of because you're very, this is what I know, this is what I can do for you, this is what I don't know, this is what I can't do for you, which I think is good. But how do you start to integrate both if you're very like this is what I know and I can't do like the programming and things for you?
Yeah, so that's where I think having a team comes into play. So there's
Okay.
four of us coaches, four of us,
Hmm.
and two of my coaches are personal training certified.
Okay.
So if somebody comes in and they want programming, they just need to work with one of those two coaches.
Okay.
Generally, we end up working with a lot of women, millennial women who do something like Orange Theory or F45 or Peloton, where they
Okay.
feel pretty good in the workouts. They need maybe someone to make sure they like are held accountable, especially with the Peloton since that's at home. They're like,
Okay.
hey, I want to do 2 hours of Peloton workouts over the week. You don't need to be a specialist to be like, yeah, did you do it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Did great. Um, but we really focus more on the nutrition piece than I think I've done a lot of the personal training, a lot of programs with personal trainers,
Hmm.
worked with them for the training, and then sometimes they'll add on nutrition. And the nutrition piece always seems to be like, oh, did you hit your macros? If you did, great. If you didn't, you should do that next week. And then like
Hmm.
they kind of move me on to the next week. And I'm like, that's not very helpful for me.
Yeah.
Like I need more than that. And so that's what we do. And
Okay.
so it's more focused on nutrition. We can do programming if somebody wants it. It's very rare somebody does because they're
Okay.
coming to us because we're, a nutrition company.
Okay. So would you say that most of the people that come to you are someone with like a predisposed type of condition or someone that is just focused on like the main weight loss? Because when I think registered dietitian, I think someone that has some type of, and I'm just being broad here, but some type of like gut issue or pre-diabetic, something like that. And that's when I would start to be like, maybe I should get like a registered dietitian, not just I want to lose weight.
I'd say we're probably 50% people have something, and most people
Hmm.
have something.
Hmm.
High blood pressure, PCOS,
Hmm.
high hypothyroidism. Usually
Hmm.
those are our biggest ones is hypothyroidism, PCOS.
Okay.
Prediabetes is pretty big too. But I
Hmm.
think a lot of it is wanting somebody who knows what they're talking about so that they
Hmm.
can put their utmost faith in what we're saying. So if I say or we say to do something, there's no, oh, does she really know what she's talking about? They don't even have that question in their
Hmm.
mind because there's a lot of people giving nutrition advice. It's horrible.
Hmm. So a lot of these like different PCOS, pre-diabetes, how can someone just look at themselves and be like, ooh, like, how should I word this? How can we start to like, I don't want to say diagnose ourselves, but when is the time to go and reach out to someone when you may be concerned that you have an underlying condition that you're unaware of?
I mean, a lot of these conditions are caught with basic blood work at your doctor.
Okay.
So PCOS and prediabetes are caught with a blood A1C test.
Mm-hmm.
Not PCOS is it basically a bucket of, we don't know what's going on, but there's something going on. And I think we're going to find out exactly what those things are over the next 10 to 30 years
Okay.
as more women get into research, because PCOS is a women only disease.
Okay.
But a lot of these things are caught with basic blood work.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like we know something's wrong. Sometimes we choose to ignore that something's wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I'll somebody come to me and they're like, I know something's up. I'm hoping I can just get nutrition to fix it. And a lot of these things can be. I mean, PCOS can be, I don't want to say you don't have it anymore, but
Mm-hmm.
it's asymptomatic, basically.
Okay.
A lot of times the change in diet, hypothyroidism can get better depending on the cause. Prediabetes, we can definitely reverse. High blood pressure, high cholesterol, we can reverse a lot of the time.
Okay.
You know, or someone will be like, my doctor says I have high cholesterol. I really don't want to go on a statin. I told them I'd like to give 6 months to give nutrition a try first. And then they
Mm-hmm.
don't end up needing the statin.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I don't know if
So
that answered your question.
yes, yes. So what I want to move into next is when I hear the term like registered dietitian, okay, and this is just like me, I'm sure like other people think this way as well. The first thing I think is like meal plan, okay, versus just like, oh, just stick to like these macros and things. So, from your point of view, when is it necessary to give someone a like these are the exact foods that you need to eat versus this is a broad like these are the categories in which you need to eat?
I don't give meal plans. They don't
Okay.
work.
Okay.
I would say they would work for like, you're getting a colonoscopy in 3 days and you need to eat this, like very specific medical prep, which someone else has then given them a meal plan. Some
Okay.
other RD has made that meal plan.
Okay.
And it wasn't me. So I'd say for very specific things, you're having surgery in a week, it's on your digestive tract, you need to eat low fiber foods or whatever. But some other RD made that meal plan. I don't make meal plans. I don't think they
Okay.
work.
Okay.
Have you ever been able to stick to a meal plan? More than
Not
3 days?
forever. Not forever.
Yeah.
So
You could do it if you had a
um
medical test in a week and the doctor said you need to eat this way for this procedure. You could do that. But
mhm.
longer than that, it's not
Yeah.
going to work.
Yeah. Um so from here I actually want to move into backtracking a little bit. So when
Mhm.
you were in the medical field, okay, what was the transition like going from a hospital setting to an online setting? Was that just I'm going to quit the hospital and I'm just going to go do this instead? Was it like a slow transition? What were kind of like the
No.
thoughts
So,
behind it and how did it get to where you are now?
yeah, I was at a fitness conference in Kansas City, the Kansas
Mhm.
City Fitness Conference, actually.
Okay.
And Mike Dola, who used to own, I don't know if he still does, Stronger You Nutrition,
Mhm.
realized I was an RD and basically headhunted me.
Okay.
um, and so I started working for Stronger You. I was their second dietitian on staff. I think this was 2017.
Okay.
Not totally sure.
Mhm.
And so I started working for them, and they, I was getting one client every day or two. It was insane.
Okay.
Um,
Wow.
and then, so I slowly started paring back at the hospital. I went down to part-time, and then I went down to per diem, which just means like as needed. I would
Yeah.
come in like basically every Monday or Monday and Friday or something like that.
Mhm.
And then around Thanksgiving, this was in May, and around Thanksgiving, I had enough clients at Stronger You to quit. And I could have kept working there longer, but I really didn't want to work at the hospital during the holidays again, because you
Mm.
have to work. You have to work holidays and all those things
Yeah.
because people still need you. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter if it's Christmas. Yeah, and I also had a huge commute.
Mm.
It was an hour, it was about 2.5 hours total via walking in the bus to the
Oh
hospital.
wow.
So it was just like, I can't I don't want to keep doing this anymore.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a slow transition, but also a very quick one, if that
Mm,
makes sense.
kind of. Yes and no. So going from working under Mike to where you are now, how did that start to transition?
Actually, I made my mind up to do it December 2019.
Okay.
And then I started kind of exploring what I wanted it to look like in early 2020.
Hmm.
And then with COVID, everything was so crazy. And we
Hmm.
bought this house and everything. And I was like, you know what, if everything's going to change, I might as well just do it all at once.
Mm.
So I did some things kind of behind the scenes, kind of setting myself up, and
Hmm.
then quit at Stronger You, kind of eased over over a couple months, kind of eased
Hmm.
my clients into new coaches, and some of them came with me. And that first year, it was hard. I'll tell you, I
Yeah.
didn't make out hardly any money that year.
Hmm.
But I'd been saving the year before for the
Okay.
house. And I was like, you know what, we're going to make sure when we go to buy this house that we save enough that we don't need my income for a couple months,
Okay.
or don't need it to be too much. And it was a tough year, but it was very rewarding. And I'm really glad I did it, but it was a hard leap for sure.
So what were,
Business.
so besides some of like more the monetary issues, what were some of the most difficult like things that you had to overcome when first starting the business?
I'd say there's just a lot to do, and that's why I did it slowly. You
Mm.
know, making a website and like learning more about how to post on social media, to, you know, learning how to do all the back end things. I was a really good coach, but
Mhm.
how did I want that coaching to change when it was my own thing? How do I do billing? I have to set up my own email address. Like all of
Mhm.
these things, none of them are huge in and of themselves, but when you stack it all up,
Mhm.
it can add up to a lot of things. So I think it was really helpful for me to ease into it while still doing my normal job.
Okay.
Um, and that's what I did when I left the hospital too, is I kind of eased into it. And I think for some people, they do really well with just taking the plunge. I knew
Mhm.
I would find myself overwhelmed. I kind of needed my home base that I was comfortable with, that I felt really confident in before, like, and kind of, you know, like a baseball player kind of slowly stealing the next base, you know, they kind of like ease toward it, they get their foot out there. I don't know
Mhm.
anything about baseball, but I know they kind of like get their foot out there and start going like a little bit before
Okay.
the ball is hit. And that's kind of how I did things. And I found that to be um less terrifying. It's still scary
Okay. Yeah.
to start your own business, make any
So
big change.
yeah. So were there um any type of like self-doubt or disbelief in like yourself that you had to overcome in terms of
Oh yeah.
starting or yeah. So
Yeah.
what did that look like? How did you start to overcome that and have a more, I don't want to say positive self-talk because I'm not saying that you're talking down to yourself, but how did the thoughts start to change?
Well, I think something that really helped was we were renovating our house at the time. So we bought this house and we've completely renovated it. Um, and having that other focus was very helpful, of
Okay.
having something where when you are doing like a project with your hands and you can see pretty quickly the finished result of whatever project that is, it made this more mental project of starting my own business a lot easier, because if I was starting to get overwhelmed, I could shift to something else that was still being very productive. So having another way that I was making progress when sometimes it felt like I was standing still,
Mm.
and having the support of my partner, I think, is huge. You know, making sure we were both on the same page, and knowing just in advance, knowing this was going to take probably 2 years to get back to where I felt really comfortable and confident, and knowing, like, thinking back on other times where I felt that way, being like, yeah, when I decided I didn't want a student, that I didn't want to be a teacher, that was really hard.
Mhm.
But I'm so glad that I went through that transition time.
I gotcha. So, as we kind of start to close things out here, what do you envision your business to look like in the future now?
Yeah. I mean, depending on when we're talking in the future, but
Hmm.
I've got a team of three coaches right now.
Hmm.
And really supporting them to be the best coaches that they can be so that they can
Okay.
help more people.
Okay.
And I can be there to guide them and adding to our team. I never want to get to be this huge business. I really like being a small business. I like that feel. But having enough so that if somebody, you know, gets really sick or they go on vacation, or having a bunch of different specialties of different coaches who, if you come to me and you say, hey, I'm looking to train to climb Mount Kilimanjaro, that's a very different client than, hey, I'm a mom of 4 and I would like to lose baby weight because I've been pregnant breastfeeding for the last 8 to 10 years. Those are very different people, and to be able to have different personalities and different specialties to be able to work with each of those people within the same place, that is really cool. And so just being able to, yeah, like I said, help more people and make sure that they're working with the best person for them in particular at their spot in their life and their goals right now.
Okay. So my last question here, how can we, based on, I know we've covered just a bunch of different topics here. That's always how my podcasts end up. It's just every which way. But going from seeing everything that you've done and how many different spaces you've been in, what is the best advice that you can give to someone in terms of finding the right information? Because there's so much information out there.
Right information on nutrition or business?
Nutrition.
I would say to look for the common themes in a lot of what different experts are saying.
Okay.
So, and not to make it too complicated. I think that people try to get fancy with it, and there's a lot of things we don't know about nutrition. So people can make these claims and they may or may not be true. We discovered the most recent vitamin, I think in the 50s or 60s. We discovered the first one like 120 years ago.
Oh, okay.
Like, it's a new thing. We're discovering things all the time. So, I mean, I think it's hard to find where the best advice comes from, but getting a basic foundation in nutrition, maybe picking up a nutrition 101 textbook and just kind of having that and kind of looking at that and getting the basics of like, so that you know when someone's absolutely full of crap, because a lot of people are full of crap because they're trying to sell you something. You know, they're trying to sell their supplement, and some supplements are great, some are bad. There's a lot of misinformation out there. If you get a really good foundation on what the basics are, you can spot a lot of that. But just also having your guard up. What are the qualifications this person is, you know, for saying this? Are other people saying this? Or are only people, you know, bodybuilders saying this, but then other people aren't? Looking for that commonality. It's tough out there.
Yeah,
I'll tell you, it's tough out there.
It is. So I figured you would have like a good perspective on what that would look like. Just based on how many different areas you've kind of been in this space. So
yeah, get the basics down, knowing what the basics are, getting your fruits and vegetables. I would say that's the biggest thing, like a specific advice. Pretty much everybody. People don't eat enough vegetables.
Yeah.
They don't.
Okay. I feel like that's a whole conversation in itself. Just like
that's why I just gave one.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair. So now we can just where can we find you on your socials, things like that, people that may want to inquire about working with you or
so
someone on your team?
You can find me on Instagram at bonnie.rd. You can also find our website, thenourished.path.com. I have a quick and easy cookbook there that's free, so you can grab that, and an easy eating out guides. So those are some things you can grab. Also some great blog posts. The one that's the most popular right now are my grab and go lunches, like Lunchable style lunches that you can take with you on the go. I love those.
Yeah, no, those are very helpful. So other than that, Bonnie, thank you very much. And everyone, thank you for joining us, and we'll catch you next time.
Thanks for having me.